Week 6 of college football is here, and we're back for another episode to give you an inside look of some previews and predictions for some of the hottest and greatest games of the weekend. I'm Nathan Johnston here with my co host, Brad Hopkins. It's time to break the huddle. Brad, every week college football is just spectacular, and there's not one week that disappoints us. This week will be no different. But before we get into the predictions, let's talk about our updated records as stand. Now, as you can see, I'm by myself tonight. No Rooster tonight. He's away for the week, but he'll be back soon. But currently, as stands, you and Rooster are tied at 17 and 13. Rooster sent me in the records. He tried to slip away with 18 and 12, but I've got the text threads on my phone saying, quote, "Is it too late to change my pick from UNLV to Fresno State?" So Rooster, didn't forget, kept the text, and if you'd like to discuss at a later date, we can. But as stands, you and Brad are tied. You said you were one game ahead, but I called a tie. With that being said, because we're going to talk about UNLV, I'm still behind at 14 and 16 in my record. Hopefully I can catch up this week. Brad, let's not waste anyone's time. Let's jump right into it. That's a good segue into our first game of the week. Friday night kickoff between the number 25 UNLV Rebels and the Syracuse Big Orange. Syracuse coming into town into Las Vegas to play in Allegiant Stadium, home of the UNLV Rebels. This is a Friday night kickoff, like I mentioned, 9 p.m. on Fox Sports 1, and UNLV currently favored by 7. Brad, we were really high on this UNLV team 2 weeks ago. And then we hear the news of Matthew Sluka leaving the program, redshirting, wanting to leave because, quote, he wasn't getting paid enough. I believe he was promised $100,000, was only received $3,000. But nonetheless, UNLV did not skip a beat. In fact, their next up quarterback looks just as good, if not better. Brad, I'll turn it over to you. Both of these teams riding high coming into this Friday night kickoff. Who do you have coming out on top?
Nate, yeah, man, and you made it some really good points there in the introduction. I really want to quickly hit on Matthew Sluka. I think it's just an absolute disappointment and disgrace, and it just really makes me sad, man, Nate, for the state of college football. But this guy, I get it, that you're promised money and you didn't receive, and we've heard this obviously a few times come up. Obviously with him, Jaden Rashada's gone through the same thing, and I get it. These guys are promised something, and sometimes it's not upheld. But bottom line, to me, it's a little bit of a cop out, and it's a little bit of the money's more important to me than playing football. And so, Nate, my really big point before I move into talking about this game is, first of all, it's time for the NCAA to do something. We know they'll never do that. They're cop out chicken organization. I wish we could get someone in the NCAA on this show because, Nate, I know we would have some great questions for them and put them on the hot seat a little bit. They need to answer for some of the stupid decisions they've made. But also, Nate, going further, the NFL, to me, when they're going through their scouting and drafting process, they need to start asking these guys the tough questions. Is it all about the pay for you, or you want to hear to be to play football? So that's my little rant on Matthew Sluke in that situation. But you mentioned new quarterback Hajj Malik Williams, and man, that he stepped right into this very fun UNLV offense. I'm really high on Brennan Marion, and Barry Odom. Nate has just done such a great job. I know we're both really high on him. I think we're both of the opinion, and I know you've said it several times, that I think we both have said he's going to get some offers in one of the Power Four conferences. I mean, I think it's just a given because he's totally turned that UNLV program around. I think the same thing with Brendan Marion. I think he's either going to get some either big time OC offers or maybe even some head coaching offers. For Syracuse, Fran Brown's doing a really good job there. Kyle McCord's really the star, and I think is really kind of made everyone forget a little bit about some of his struggles at Ohio State last year. Getting to this game, I like Syracuse. I like what they have going. I think they keep it under 7 points for the final score, but I'm taking UNLV just because of this unique offense. And like I said, I'm really impressed with Williams. I think he steps in there, and I think he does a good job, and the Rebels win this one.
Yeah, Brad, you bring up a lot of great points. And UNLV is riding high. They've got a new quarterback, and I think more than anything, this speaks volume to Barry Odom and that UNLV program because a lot of people, if there was really something going on behind the scenes, those players would have dropped out already. They would have given up. They would have said, you know what, this program is full of it. They're offering us stuff, but they didn't. They rallied around their backup quarterback and Haj, and I think I pronounced this right, Haj Malik Williams, who, by the way, was in a quarterback competition with Matthew Sluka heading into the season. This isn't just some backup freshman that you just throw in there because you have no other options. This is a very, very athletic, dynamic quarterback. When you look at his past, I think he had over 8,000 yards passing at the FCS level at Campbell. And to your point, this offense is super dynamic, and it speaks volume to the coordinator. It speaks volumes to Barry Odom and how he's been able to handle this whole situation. I think UNLV is in a very good place. And then you talk about Syracuse and what Fran Brown has been able to do there. No one expected this team to do much this year. Then Kyle McCord gets booted out of Ohio State. Still don't know why. You win 11 games and you get booted out of a program like Ohio State. But nonetheless, here he is at Syracuse, proving himself again. This is going to be a very tightly contested matchup. Syracuse does a great job limiting big plays, which is what UNLV likes to do. Syracuse has played very well. They come into this contest, I believe, only losing one game thus far. Man, it's tough. In the end, though, I'm gonna have to go with the UNLV Rebels. I think being at home, I think riding high. Look, this is a big game for both of these teams. But this was an even bigger game for UNLV because if they can beat a team like Syracuse, Syracuse runs the table the rest of the year and makes it to the ACC championship game. UNLV could be knocking on the doorstep of being that group of 5 team to get in. So I think this is a bigger matchup than what most people are expecting to see. And honestly, I kind of like that it's on a Friday night. This is a chance for all eyes to be on, quote unquote, the prize. Because both of these teams are fighting for something in their own regards. But give me the UNLV Rebels, and I think, to your point, I think Syracuse does cover the spread, but I think UNLV just comes out just slightly. And for those picking this game, take the over because I think this is going to be a very high-scoring affair. But give me UNLV. Let us know down in the comments who you think is going to win this ACC versus Mountain West matchup. Our next matchup of the week takes us out to the, I guess you would consider it the Midwest, maybe East, not the East Coast, but Midwest in Louisville, Kentucky, where the SMU Mustangs come into town to take on the number 22 Louisville Cardinals. This is a 12 o'clock kickoff on Saturday on ESPN. Louisville currently favored in this one by 7, playing in the L&N Federal Credit Union Stadium. Boy, that's a tongue twister. Nonetheless, these are two very promising teams in the ACC this year. Outside of Clemson, we thought Florida State was going to be something special in the beginning, and now we've seen what they're doing. This leaves the door open for the number 2 or number 1 spot, depending on who kind of comes out on top in the end. 4-1 SMU versus, I believe, 3-1 Louisville. And Brad, I'll turn it over to you. Like I said prior to recording this, these two teams are fighting for an ACC championship spot. Louisville obviously made it last year. They get a new quarterback this year who's played tremendous, and Tyler Shog. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm still unaware, but we'll get there. Done my research. Tyler Show, former Texas Tech quarterback, so I did my research. Brad, I'll turn it over to you. Thoughts on this game and who comes out on top in this ACC matchup? A very unique one.
Absolutely. And yeah, one of the, with the expanded conferences, the new conferences, just one of these unique, new, fun conference matchups. This is really an interesting matchup to me because, SMU, we thought season was over when they lost a few weeks ago to BYU. And look, they made a quarterback change, bringing in Kevin Jennings, and just absolutely put it on TCU and put it on Florida State last week. And I know I've said it, Nate, a few times on the channel. Rhett Lashley is doing a great job there with this SMU program. I mean, he has got them rolling. I think, we were just talking about this off there. It was very, very tough to bench Preston Stone. Preston Stone was a very, very high recruit, but I think it was the right move in Kevin Jennings. Kevin Jennings is definitely, he's capable as a passer, but I think his threat just with his legs is really what made this decision. They've got a very, very talented running back in Brashard Smith. He's got already 509 yards on the year and 7 touchdowns. And Nate, with this kind of offense, you don't necessarily think about the tight end being a huge part of it, but look, their tight end, RJ Maryland, is just really, really tremendous. I remember the opening game, he really went off against Nevada. And so SMU's got a lot of things going right. And jumping over to Louisville, you mentioned their quarterback. He's having a good start to the season. 11 touchdowns to just 1 pick, so he's being very, very smart with the football. Nate, I'm impressed with Ja'Cory Brooks. 22 catches on the year. Getting up close to 400 yards. And with this Louisville team, they're just going to be physical. They're going to run a lot of pro sets. But I'm going to take the upset here. I like what SMU has rolling. Kevin Jennings, to me, is just playing really, really good football. I'm taking the Mustangs in an upset on the road. And the only reason I'm saying this, I think Louisville, sometimes we've heard one loss can turn to 2. And so Louisville lost to Notre Dame last week. I think they get back-to-back losses, and the Mustangs get them here.
Yeah, Brad. Wow. And look, that loss that SMU has to BYU, not looking so bad now.
Absolutely.
BYU leads the Big 12 conference 4-0, and they're ranked. And BYU has proved us wrong. We picked against BYU a couple weeks ago, and man, they let us have it in the comments. But we won't sleep on them anymore. I can promise you that. But yeah, SMU coming off of that devastating loss against BYU. And they bounce back. They get a couple wins. They get some momentum going. And sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes you get in that snowball effect where you get one win, another win. Next thing you know, you're building a four-story snowman. So this is a team that can cover the secondary very well. They've got an elite defensive line up front. They can turn the ball over. I believe they lead the nation in turnovers forced. It's a very, very good SMU team. On the other hand, Louisville, very explosive offense, very physical at the point of attack. And in their own rights, they have a lot to prove in this game, too, like you mentioned, coming off of a loss to Notre Dame, and in which a lot of people expected Louisville to win. In the end, though, I'm going to have to take Louisville. I just think they're slightly better than SMU. I think SMU is still trying to figure it out offensively. Preston Stone gets benched. Jennings comes in, and he's done a phenomenal job. And to your point, Coach Lashley is doing a great job for the SMU Mustangs. But Louisville back at home, ready to get on track, ready to push their way to the ACC championship game. I just think they're too strong in the end. Give me Louisville in a close one. I don't know if they cover the spread, but I think the Louisville Cardinals come out on top in this one. Let us know down in the comments who you think will win this ACC matchup and what could be a winner that takes their way to the ACC championship game. For our next matchup of the week, we're going to head out to College Station, Texas, where the Missouri Tigers, the number 9 Missouri Tigers, come into town to take on the number 25 Texas A&M Aggies. This is a 12 p.m. kickoff on ABC/ESPN+. A&M currently favored in this one at Kyle Field by 2.5 points. You have to think the home field advantage plays a part in that one, Brad. I'll turn it over to you in a second, but these are two prominent programs that came to the SEC several years ago, and no one really expected much of them. They thought that, these teams are weak. Next thing you know, you got Johnny Manziel beating Alabama, and then you've got Missouri making it to the SEC championship a while ago. But since then, they've struggled. Since then, they've not figured out. They have failed to figure out a way to get back to the promised land and start getting back on that 10 to 11 win season. This is a really big opportunity for both of these programs to get back into the conversation of being prominent programs. Brad, I'll turn over to you. Who do you have winning this old-fashioned SEC matchup?
Yeah, Nate. So we were just talking off the air. It feels like these two teams are maybe still trying to figure things out and figure out their identity. And obviously, you would make that would make sense when you're talking about A&M. Of course, they're under first year head coach Mike Elko. They lose their opener to Notre Dame. And honestly, I was impressed with them going on the road and beating Florida. But A&M is definitely still trying to figure out their identity. Nate, I'm interested to get your thoughts in just a second, but I will say, from a quarterback standpoint, I've been way more impressed with Marcel Reed than I was Connor Wigman, and I'm interested to see who gets the start. But I think my personal opinion, and I would love to hear our Aggie fans' thoughts in the comments, who you guys think should be the quarterback. But I think Reed just has looked a little better. His ability to run the football is a big deal. But Nate, getting back to A&M, they did get a big win on the road to Florida, but their last two games, struggle with Bowling Green, struggle with Arkansas. So they're definitely trying to figure out their identity with Mike Elko. Mentioned Marcel Reed. Le'Veon Moss is a really, really good running back. I think they're going to continue to get him the football. Nate, a guy that stood out to me is their sophomore cornerback, Marcus Ratcliffe. Great size, 6'3", 210. And I'm going to tell you, you know about that Missouri wide receiving core. In my mind, one of the best trios in the country with Mookie Cooper, Theo Weiss Jr., and obviously Luther Burden. And transition to Missouri. Missouri's interesting because they came in with a lot of preseason hype, a lot of playoff aspirations, and look, everything's still in front of them. But their last two games, a 6-point win over Boston College, and of course that really, really great double overtime game against Vanderbilt. I think it has some people outside the Missouri fan base wondering, okay, is this team legit or not? Are they for real? Are they an SEC contender? Are they a playoff contender? I think those are fair questions, and I think, Nate, we're going to learn a lot about them. Brady Cook, up to this point, I won't say he's been disappointing, but maybe a little bit underwhelming. Just 4 touchdowns on the year, not 146 yards. They definitely need him to play to that Brady Cook level. I mentioned the unbelievable receiving core. I think you're going to start to see those guys pop off. Nate, I get it. A&M's favored in this one because it's at Kyle Field. Kyle Field's a tough place to play, but this is an early kickoff. This is an 11 a.m. Central kickoff there. So people are going to be, still sitting in the parking lot enjoying their brunch tailgate. So I'm going to take the Tigers in this one. I think Missouri really, really starts to find their identity. I think you see Brady Cook and this receiving core have some big plays deep. I'm taking the Tigers by double digits in this one.
Yeah, Brad, you bring up a lot of great points. And you mentioned the quarterback battle at A&M, and I don't see how you put Connor Wegman back in there to answer your question. When you got a backup quarterback that comes in and is playing with confidence, he's playing with finesse, as I describe it. He's playing great. I mean, this A&M team is trying to figure it out. Missouri's trying to figure it out. These are two teams that have everything still in front of them because, look, A&M's one loss to Notre Dame is out of conference. So they've still got a chance in the SEC. And when you look at Missouri's schedule up ahead, they have probably one of the most favorable schedules in all of the SEC, in my opinion. They have everything in front of them. This is their moment. This is their chance to prove. And look, they're being disrespected. They're the number 9 ranked team in the nation, and yet they're a 2.5-point underdog on the road to a top 25, number 25 team who really hasn't proven much. To your point, they struggle against Boston College, which Boston College in their own right is a decent program, and Bill O'Brien has done a phenomenal job stepping in there. Struggled against Bowling Green. That shouldn't be happening. No offense to the Bowling Green fans out there, but that shouldn't be happening at A&M. This is a team that takes great pride in dynamic dual threat quarterbacks. We think about the previous ones with Kellen Mond and Kyler Murray prior to transferring, Johnny Manziel. The list goes on and on and on. Even a guy like Ryan Tannehill back in the day. Shout out Ryan Tannehill playing wide receiver for Texas A&M. But yeah, I just I don't know. This one is really going to come down to who controls the line of scrimmage, and I think it goes towards Missouri. I'm going to have to take the Missouri Tigers in a close one on the road. It almost seems like this game is going to be a game where neither team wins it. Someone finds a way to lose it, and I think unfortunately, it's going to be A&M this, and I say unfortunately, I think it's because you and I are both so high on Mike Elko as a coach, and we really think he's the right fit for the A&M Aggies. But for Saturday's matchup, I'm going to have to stick with my gut and go with the Missouri Tigers. They just seem to be better up front. They've got the better quarterback, even with everything that the quarterback at A&M has done. Brady Cook is cooking. Luther Burr, probably the most dynamic wide receiver in all of college football. I get it. They're going to talk about the two 17-year-olds at Ohio State and at Bama. But when you look at experience, when you look at guys that are hoping to go to the NFL draft, Luther Burden is 100% probably the number one receiver off the board. Give me the Missouri Tigers in a close one. I think Nick knows something here. These are two programs which, by the way, these two programs used to be rivals in the Big 12 Conference prior going over to the SEC. So both of these fan bases, they kind of have a bone to pick. And this matchup goes a long ways more than just an SEC matchup, but I think it kind of gives you that Midwest rivalry feel, old-fashioned classic that we're going to see on display come Saturday. But give me the Missouri Tigers in a close one. Let us know down in the comments who you think is going to come on top in College Station. Our next game of the week takes us north to Fargo, North Dakota, in the Fargo Dome. Such a great name, such a great atmosphere and stadium up there in Fargo, North Dakota, where the North Dakota, and I messed this one up tremendously, Brad, so you'll have to step in. I don't even know who North Dakota's mascot is.
The Fighting Hawks.
Where the North Dakota Fighting Hawks go on the road to take on the North Dakota State Bison. 3:30 kickoff on ESPN Plus. What a shame, ESPN Plus. This should be prime time ESPNU at the very least. But nonetheless, both of these programs come in fighting for state rights and for a chance at the FCS playoffs. Both enter this contest at 4-1, and their previous games, North Dakota State slapped one on Illinois State. I believe that's who they played. And then North Dakota put up, I think, over 70 points in their last game, which is just insane. We're going to give some love to the FCS fan bases out there this year, and this is our first game to start. Brad, I'll turn it over to you. Again, not a lot of information on this game on the web. We don't even have a spread unless you somehow found one. But who comes out on top in this North Dakota rivalry?
Yes, absolutely. So excited for this one, and just shout out to all our FCS fans. You know, we talked about some FCS games last year and some of the playoff games, and just want to thank y'all. I know y'all really, really just love your football and care about your football. And Nate and I are college football purists. We love college football in every way. So this is a fun one for me and Nate. I'm definitely going to at least check out the highlights on this one Saturday night. Excited about this one. Want to start off with North Dakota. Of course, you mentioned a very explosive offense. Their only loss of the year was opening week to Iowa State, and they were extremely competitive. Lost that one 21-3, and man, I mean, they've just been explosive on offense. They put up 52, 41, 72. They have been just clicking. Nate, a guy that stands out to me is their wide receiver, Bo Belquist, and the reason he stands out is 24 catches. There's only one other player that's got double-digit catches and 478 yards. They have two receivers tied with 111. So he is by far and away their number one target. And Nate, they have 7 passing touchdowns on the year, and he's got 5 receiving touchdowns. So this guy is a legit number one target. And just to go along with that, they've got 3 running backs with at least 249 yards, and those 3 guys have accounted for 11 rushing touchdowns. So North Dakota, the Fighting Hawks, have got playmakers all over the field.
Yep.
And jumping over to the defensive side of the football, 10 sacks this year. So, they're playing some good complementary football. Jumping over to North Dakota State, and of course, if you keep up with FCS football, you know about the North Dakota State Bison. And Nate, we talked about this team earlier. They gave Colorado all they could handle. And I'm going to tell you, there was a time that opening week on Thursday night that I thought North Dakota State there in the fourth quarter was going to find a way to win. They have just got a tremendous program. I have nothing but respect. Nate, I know that we're still going through some conference changes. I hope North Dakota State gets a chance to move up to FBS. I think the transition would be seamless. You obviously think about when Appalachian State moved. Appalachian State made the transition easy. I think you're starting to see Sam Houston State, who had some success in FCS. Excuse me, they're starting to find success. James Madison, another one. Some others stand out. But I hope the Bison find their way into FBS because. That would be just really, really, I think just so fun to have this program in here. For North Dakota State, look, it starts and ends to me with Cam Miller. This guy is just a great athlete, Nate. He's a good runner. We saw that in that opening game against Colorado. They had some quarterback design runs for him, but non-touchdowns, no picks. He takes care of the football. He's got some weapons. Shamar Brown, their freshman running back, he is really, really. He's had a good year already. He's got 5 touchdowns, over 300 yards, and Nate, I think North Dakota State to me just plays a little bit better complementary football right now than North Dakota does. And Nate, another thing that stands out to me, both these teams I talked about with North Dakota, but North Dakota State, they know how to get after quarterback. They have 11 sacks from this point, so. We don't know the spread on this one. Couldn't find any information. I think it's going to be a close one, but I think the fact that this one is in the Fargo Dome, it's going to be a tremendous atmosphere. I'm going to take the Bison in a close one.
Yeah, Brad, you bring up a lot of great points, and you talk about North Dakota and the Fighting Hawks, and you talk about North Dakota State Bison. We like to talk about FCS games every year. This is a game that should be on everyone's radar. An in-state matchup in the Fargo Dome. It's a fantastic atmosphere, beautiful, beautiful country land out there in North Dakota. And to your point, Brad, we've seen so many teams transition into the Division One FBS level from FCS pretty smoothly. And we talked about James Madison, not getting a bowl bid. They got to change those rules in the NCAA. Maybe that prevents some of these teams from coming up. But earlier today, we just saw Gonzaga announce their arrival Pac-12, and I think if they're capable of doing it, I think North Dakota State in their own right can make that jump too. Maybe even a team like North Dakota as well. I want to pinpoint on a couple of things. Number one, both of these teams play really good defense. I mean, they held Colorado to 31 points, which I know is not great in a lot of college football eyes, but to me, that's really good. And then you look at North Dakota, they held, even though they lost 21-3 to Iowa State, they held Iowa State to 21 points. They've given up 24 against Montana, 28 against Idaho State, and 24 against the University, I believe that's South Dakota. They've given up more points against FCS competition than they did against a Big 12 Power 4 team. So I think you got to give a lot of credit to both of these teams. I also want to mention wide receiver for the North Dakota State Bison, Bryce Lance, that's right, the younger brother of Trey Lance, who is very familiar with the North Dakota State program and legacy, did some phenomenal jobs. And you mentioned Cam Miller at quarterback now for the North Dakota State Bison. Just he's done fantastic. Over 100 yards, 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Didn't even throw an interception against Colorado, who has Travis Hunter sitting back there waiting to pick that ball off. You look at the other side, Romfo hasn't played great, got 900 yards, 7 touchdowns, but the turnovers have been plaguing him. 5 interceptions thus far on the season. I think it's going to be a close game. Like you said, Brad, we don't have the spread on this one. Both teams are going to show up. Both teams are going to be physical up front. In the end, I'm going to take the North Dakota State Bison, and I'm going to take them by 14 points. I don't know the spread on this game, but I think they win in a big way to get bragging rights in the state of North Dakota. If you're a fan of either of these teams or FCS in general, let us know down in the comments who you think is going to come out on top in the Fargo Dome on Saturday. We're going to stay out west, Midwest, for our next matchup, where the Rutgers, and Forgot this last week. I'm not going to forget this week. The Rutgers Scarlet Knights go on the road to take on the Nebraska Cornhuskers. 4 p.m. kickoff on Fox Sports 1 in Nebraska, favored by 6.5 in this game out in Lincoln, Nebraska, Memorial Stadium. A sellout crowd every single Saturday. Both of these teams are fighting for a spot in the Big Ten. Usually we'd be talking about the Big Ten West. Now we're just talking about the Big Ten as a whole as there's no more divisions. But nonetheless, both of these programs come into this game fighting for a chance for the Big Ten. And Brad, I'm excited for this one. I'm going to turn it over to you. I won't waste anyone's time. Who do you have coming out on top in this one?
I'm with you, man. Excited for this one. This just feels like a little bit of a throwback game. Both these teams, run a pro style offense. They're very physical. They're both going to concentrate on playing good defense, and I'm excited for this one. Just feels like a throwback game. Nate, I want to give a shout out because we picked Rutgers Virginia Tech a couple weeks ago. I want to give a shout out. Rutgers has impressed me. They're undefeated at this point. They've nothing's been just really stand out, but they got a 3-point win against Virginia Tech, and then got a really, really big win against the college football runner-ups last year. And I know it's a brand new team, but got a 3-point win over Washington. So Greg Schiano and the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, hats off, man. I'm very, very impressed. Nate, this one, to me, it's, I hate to make it simple, but to me, it's pretty simple. Rutgers has got a very, very talented running back in Kyle, I believe it's Managi. 589 yards on the year. This guy's a workhorse. And Nate, in the era that we're in college football with the transfer portal and switching teams, this guy's a senior, and he spent every year in New Jersey at Rutgers. And his first 2 years good. He nothing stood out, but last year had a breakout with 1,200 yards, and this year, I mean, he's picked it back up. So hats off to him. One of the best running backs, maybe a little bit of an under the radar guy, but one of the best running backs in the country. And getting back to it, simply comes down to me is, can Rutgers get this running game going? Because Nebraska has got a very, very good front seven. And the guy, obviously, that stands out to me for Nebraska is big Ty Robinson, 6'6", 310 pounds. They're charging him with plugging up that middle, commanding a double team, getting those linebackers free, also, creating some havoc in the running game and getting TFLs. Nate, simply, it comes down to me of, I think Nebraska's just going to be a little bit too physical. I think Ty Robinson has a big day. And Nate, I will say, I think every time you watch freshman quarterback Dylan Raiola, you just see improvement. And look, he's been good into this point. I still think, he's still processing stuff, still think he's learning, the speed of the college game, but I think he continues to do well. I think you're going to see Nebraska continue to try to find that, their workhorse running back. And I'm going to take the Huskers in this one. I think they covered the spread barely. I think they win by 7 points, but give me the Cornhuskers in this one.
Brad, how about this matchup? Greg Schiano versus Matt Rule. Both coaches, well, at least for Greg Schiano, was pretty much on the hot seat last year and the year before. Then he comes out, proves himself, stays undefeated, comes into Lincoln, Nebraska with a chance to knock off a very hot Nebraska Cornhuskers team. And I want to say real quick, shame on ESPN and College Game Day. Shame on you, because this game should have been College Game Day. You're going to go out to Berkeley, California, and watch Cam Ward and Miami in a game play against a 3-1 Cal team where Cam Ward almost lost to Virginia Tech in that game. That game should have been won by Virginia Tech. But here we are. This should be our game of the week, in my opinion. But, hey, it is what it is. I think both teams deserve a College Game Day, and hopefully they get it as the season goes on. That atmosphere would have been a lot again or out at Rutgers, either way. But nonetheless, here we are, two teams battling it out in Big Ten. As you mentioned before, both have pro offenses, both like to play physical up front. This is we talk about West Virginia and Pitt being your backyard brawl. These two teams define what a backyard brawl is about. They want to beat you up. They want to hit you in the mouth and see how you're going to respond. If you're watching this game with your wife and kids on Saturday afternoon, you might want to tell them to go to bed early, because this is going to be an all-out brawl, in my opinion. This is going to be a game that we look back on in December and go, wow, that was probably one of the best games of the year, in my opinion. Nebraska fair 6.5. You talk about Dylan Raiola, his young brother recently committed to the University of Nebraska as well. Shout out to Dylan and his younger brother, the Raiola family, very close tied to the Nebraska Cornhuskers. But we're going to talk about the game today. Look, I think it simply comes down to this: can they force Dylan Raiola to make mistakes? Because Dylan Raiola, he's a playmaker. Got that Patrick Mahomes like throwing motion where he can kind of throw it to the side. He can pitch it. He can do under. He's a razzle dazzle. He's a magician. He's young. He's learning. And here's what I want to see from Nebraska this week. I want to see, does Dylan continue to improve? Even if they lose this game, does he continue to improve? This is your future. This is your guy. And he's shown it up front. His leadership, his confidence, everything about him is the kind of mentality. Reminds me, honestly, not playing style, but just mentality and leadership and maturity level. It reminds me a lot of a freshman guy in Trevor Lawrence at Clemson a while ago. Just a very humble, hardworking guy who you thought might be kind of full of himself. But here we stand in week 6, and he's proven himself to me at least. I hope he has to y'all as well. Then on the other side with Rutgers, one of the best running all of the nation, probably behind Genty, and that's pretty much it. I think it's and I forget his last name, Brad. You'll have to tell me, but the Rutgers running back and Genty, two of the best running backs in all of the nation, in my opinion. In the end, though, I think the slight home field advantage goes to Nebraska. Look, last time I picked Nebraska, they disappointed me. They lost. But I think they bounced back, and I think they bounced back in a big way. Illinois gave them a tough fight. And look, it was a good test for Nebraska. That was a wake-up game for them. I think it's going to make them stronger. I think it's going to create that I'm drawing a blank for words. It's going to bring them closer together. That's all you need to know. And I'm going to Nebraska in a close one. I think Rutgers plays it close. I think they've got a great team. But give me the Nebraska Cornhuskers at home in Lincoln. Let us know down in the comments who you think is going to win this Big Ten matchup in Lincoln, Nebraska. And that brings us to our final game of the week. And I know Brad's excited about this kickoff time. The Texas Tech Red Raiders hit the road to head out to Tucson, Arizona. So many country songs written about this town. I love it. To take on the Arizona Wildcats. This is an 11 o'clock Eastern Time p.m. That's right, 11 p.m. Eastern Time kickoff on Fox. Arizona currently favored by 6 in this one. And Brad, you have to think that's home field advantage and the fact that probably half of America will be asleep by that time. I'll turn it over to you. Two prominent programs in the Big 12, two teams fighting for a Big 12 championship spot. And shame on ESPN again. This should have been a college game day game too. 4-1 versus 3-1. And I think both of these teams deserve more credit than what they've been given. I'll turn it over to you, Brad. Thoughts on this game and who comes out on top in Tucson?
Nate, it's funny. I take it you don't like the college game day pick this week with Miami.
No, it's terrible.
No, you brought up this is 11 p.m. kickoff. We're here in the East Coast, so I guess I'm gonna be drinking some coffee late because I'm staying up to watch this one, and I'm gonna have Miami. I'm gonna have Miami Cal on as well. But
absolutely,
yeah, I'm excited about this one. I mean, we're talking about a very, very big game in the Big 12, and I'm a huge fan of Joey McGuire and what he's done with his Texas Tech program. Excuse me, their quarterback, Baron Morton, has had a tremendous year, 14 touchdowns and just 2 picks. He's been great, but Nate, Taj Brooks is just such a physical runner. He's just such a good fit for this Texas Tech offense, and I'm impressed. But, Nate, I got to talk about Arizona. Arizona was such an intriguing team for me coming into the year. I thought they were a little bit of a dark horse in the Big 12, and to an extent they still are because – they had a tremendous year last year, and what happens, Jed Fish goes up to Washington, and Brent Brennan, I think, has done a great job. Of course, a couple weeks ago, they were blown out on a Friday night against Kansas State, and everyone's thinking, okay, Arizona, they're going to have an okay year, but they're going to be brought down to earth. And what happens? They go last week into Utah, into Rice-Eccles Stadium, and I know Utah was without Cam Rising, but Nate, Utah's a good program. I mean, let's take nothing away, and that is a tough place to play.
Absolutely.
And what does Arizona do? They get an upset over a very very good Utah team, and that to me sets up. I mean, I think Arizona has got a legit chance to win the Big 12 now, and I think they have a legit chance to be the college football representative. You look at after this, and not to jump ahead too much because I know we're talking about this game, but after this, they've got BYU next week, which that's going to be a fantastic one. And Nate, to me, the schedule is very, very manageable. So, Nate, this one comes down to, and it's just simply, I think Arizona's defense is rolling. They struggled week one against New Mexico. They gave up 39 points, and Avery Johnson in Kansas State really toasted them. But I think this Arizona defense is starting to come along. And then you talk about my favorite quarterback wide receiver duo in the country, Noah Fafita and Tatorie McMillan. I hope I pronounced that right. But Nate, we just got done, a couple games ago talking about Luther Burden. If Luther Burden's the best receiver in America, or probably the number one likely receiver to go in the draft next year, McMillan might be number two. This guy's big. He's physical. He's a great route runner. He's got good speed. I mean, 29 catches, 503 yards, and just unbelievable. And this one simply comes down to Arizona's got this unbelievable 1-2 punch. Conley has been he's been a serviceable running back. I think this Arizona passing attack and this offense is way too much. And I think Texas Tech is going to score, but I think they're not going to be able to keep up with Arizona. Look at Texas Tech. They gave up 51 to Abilene Christian, 41 last week to Cincinnati. Washington State put 37 on them. I think that this Wildcat offense is just too much. I think Arizona, like I said, with that upset win last week, their season's almost, they've just got all this confidence and momentum. I'm taking the Wildcats by double digits in this one.
Wow, Brad. Wow. As George Strait said, I think this is how the song goes. I left out Tucson with no destination in mind. Probably one of my favorite songs of all time. But shout out George Strait, King George, one of the best in country music. But for this game in Tucson, you bring up great points. These two teams are very familiar with each other. Now, they've met 33 times throughout their history, but only once since 1990, and that matchup came in 2019, where the Red Raiders beat Arizona 28-14 in Tucson, Arizona. Now, at that point, you got Texas Tech in the Big 12, Arizona in the Pac-12, so that was a pretty cool, exciting matchup for both teams. Now they're both facing each other in the Big 12 conference, looking to bounce back, and I say bounce back, catapult their way forward. We both picked Texas Tech last week against Cincinnati, and Texas Tech barely slipped out at the end. I don't want to say lucky in Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a great team. But, yeah, to your point, they're giving up a lot of defense, and since Joey McGuire became the head coach at Texas Tech, they're 3-9 on the road. They struggle on the road, and I don't know why that is. Arizona, even under their new head coach, since last season has gone 7-1 at home. Then they find themselves in a late night matchup, which I think favors them in so many different ways, including the time change. I get it. It's not that big of a time change when you look at Lubbock versus Tucson, but it's still a late kickoff nonetheless. And with that being said, if it comes down to what I think it's going to come down to, and that's who outscores who, I got to go with the Arizona Wildcats. I think for one, you take the over in this game. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair. I think both teams are probably going to put up at least 30 to 40 points apiece, if I had to guess. And I could be way wrong. Maybe this ends up being a defensive game that both teams probably score in the 20s. But if it goes the way it should go, it's going to be a score fest. If you like to see high, fast, flashy offenses go at it, tune in 11 p.m. on Saturday night in Tucson. Give me the Arizona Wildcats in a close one. I think Texas Tech does keep it close, but I just think Arizona comes out in a close one on top. I think being at home, having a high-flying offense, to your point with McMillan, and they have a tight end. I want to give him a shout-out real quick because he is the client of a buddy of mine, and that is Keon Burnett. tight end for the Arizona Wildcats. He's starting to make a few plays in that offense. So give me the Arizona Wildcats in a close one. Let us know down in the comments who you think is going to come out on top in this Big 12 matchup in Tucson, Arizona. We'll see you next week. It's time to break the huddle. Hey, YouTube, be sure to subscribe down below. Give this video a like and share it with your friends. We'll see you next week. It's time to break the huddle.